Teachers, are you ready to learn? Because I am ready to teach about the digital mastery model and how this really redefines teaching time, changes the job of a teacher in a classroom if you're implementing a model of learning and a model of instruction like this. And I know you can ask, Mr. C, why do I like to learn on my feet. Why is it important that I learn about this before I just jump in and try it? And maybe you are a jump in and try it type, but I feel like there's such a massive shift in independence and open mindsets in the classroom that it's good to get a picture of some of the behind the scenes pedagogy before you just jump in and start getting your hands dirty, though that is also an important part as well. There is so much lifetime learner individualization and personalization that I want to show you the model in a vacuum without real students and real teachers so you can get a concept for it before you start to get exposed to the model with real students and real teachers. And finally, there's tons of access for creativity and buy-in. This is really customizable. And so I don't want to show you what somebody else is doing. I want to show you a very basic model and then explain how it's easily customized to really be exciting for any kind of teaching style, any kind of teacher, really. So the first thing we're going to do is really take a look and compare and contrast a little bit traditional stereotypical classrooms and digital mastery model classrooms. Now, I know, before I get started, I know, not everyone is a stereotypical traditional classroom. There's lots of innovation and there's lots of really exciting new things happening in classrooms. If you're watching this video, you're probably doing a lot of really cool, interesting stuff in your room. I'm talking about the stereotypical traditional lamer classroom, okay? Things that really, what's the script for teaching in your classroom, right? First, it's very teacher-paced and teacher-accessed. You're the sage on the stage, you're giving everybody the lesson, you're providing them the instruction, or you're providing them access to the content, I should say, and you're pacing out what they're doing. How long everybody's going to get instruction, how long everyone's going to do skills practice, if and when there's going to be projects, and when everyone is about to take this assessment. And what that translates into, I find, is classroom management, social emotional needs, and incentive programs get in the way, right? Those things are really hard to script, and those things are really hard to know that you're going to need time for, right? You don't know when behavior problems are going to flare up. You don't know when you're going to need some inspiration and some incentives in your class, and you want to be able to do that in the moment, or I should say those things are best done in the moment, and in a scripted classroom, that gets in the way and detracts from teaching and learning time. You're going to see direct whole group instruction, right? I'm going to link this to the gradual release model. I do, right? Watch me show you how to do this. Students are then going to practice with the skill. You're going to be able to help them. More often than not, you're going to pull differentiated groups. You're going to work with those high-risk students. You're going to work with your language learners. You're going to work with your lows. This is where you're going to see flare-ups from your social emotional students. And you're probably going to have to pull them into small groups or spend special attention with them as well. Generally, during this time, the students that are perceived as excelling or succeeding or at least being quiet are going to get a lot less attention because you're working with the students who are audibly and visually needing your attention, even though you're supposed to be working with everyone at that time. And then finally, assessment, exit tickets, and homework is where you're going to gather your data to see if the kids actually learned it, right? You probably have a way of tracking this data. You'll grade it separately. You take it home and grade it, or find some way to grade it and track to see if the students actually onboarded this. And then there's, oh no, the kids that didn't learn it had to get remedial lessons. And so this process begins anew with this whole remedial process. So I want to give you a look at how it's different in the digital mastery model. First and foremost, this is a student-paced and student-accessed model. Students drive what they're doing and when they're doing it, okay? There can be, and this is different, this is individualized, right? So there could be students accessing instruction, there could be a student sitting right next to them taking an assessment, and a student right next to them working on a mini project, right? They could be working in similar or even different subject areas, to tell you the truth, but they are driving what they are learning and what they're accessing at the time. Now, what that means is you are freed up as a teacher. Your time, the time that you have, is completely redefined. And so you really get to not deal with social emotional problems, classroom management, and incentive programs. You get to focus on these things. These are foundational, right? And students who need this, and in classroom environments that need management and need social emotional coaching and need incentives, really, like, you should be doing that first and foremost. And this is a model that lets you do that, that encourages it, that focuses on that. There is a we do for everything, right? You're not on the stage anymore, right? If you know about, the digital mastery model, they're getting digital instruction. So you're not standing up front of the class telling everybody what they're going to learn. That means you get to be present at all phases of this. So you get to witness students in instruction and help them out if you see them struggling. You get to witness students in skills practice, in projects, and in assessments, formal assessments, and you get to really gather data and reflect on this in a completely different way because you have so much more time to be present and work with kids at all stages. We do everything, though you are pushing and probing them to independence as much as humanly possible, and that counts at skills practice. You have lots of time to work in small groups, or what I prefer, individual groups. You work with kids face to face, and I'm going to give you a model of what that looks like and how that might feel in a learning environment. But you have the opportunity to work with students as they need you right in their face. It's really hard to slip through the cracks when you're staring me in the eyeballs. And this model provides so much more time for teachers to work one-on-one with students that absolutely need you. Really an accent point to this model is assessments happen when they're appropriate. Not everyone's taking an assessment at the same time on a certain scheduled day. Students take them when they're ready for them, which really just redefines the learning model. It sounds appropriate. And when you see and feel that in your classroom, you are setting these kids up for success and confidence. They're not failing their test, or they're not barely passing their test the first time that they take it every time. When they get to their assessments, 9 times out of 10, they're ready for it. Students of all different abilities. And that's really great and really different from a traditional classroom environment. So let's go ahead and take a look at just a bland learning environment, right? There's a teacher up at the front. There's the star. Now, I put 4 walls on this, but this doesn't have to be a classroom. This could be a bus. This could be outdoors. You could do this in a museum, right? Really, all I'm showing you here is a teacher, a single teacher even, and a classroom of students. And then you can look off to the side here. We have our process, right? Learner accessed instruction, skills practice, projects, and assessments, all accessed in the digital world, right? So we have our average kids. We have some of our more challenged kids, or what you might call lows, right? Students that tend to struggle with material when they first come across it. You have your GT kid, your gifted and talented kids, or your highs, students that tend to excel and onboard content quickly. And then you have students with special needs in all of those groups sitting in your classroom. Some of these students may have language barriers. Some of these students may have social, emotional baggage or behavioral barriers. Some of these students may have severe IEPs or even physical or speech disabilities, right? And so we have all these different learners that fall into really this full spectrum of abilities sitting in one classroom. But the important part is to understand they're all in a functional classroom accessing this content on their own. Now, I say functional, and I put functional at the top of this page because I want to point out no model is going to fix classroom management issues, right? If you have a negative classroom environment, or a classroom management style that is not working, this certainly won't fix it, and nothing will. So I say functional as in this is, your students are understand expectations and are working to fulfill, right? So that's standard. Any classroom, you're going to need that in order to evaluate if a program's working or not. So we have a functional classroom environment where kids know generally how to go through this process and onboard content on their own, right? And so the role of the teacher is completely different. You're not standing up in front teaching for 30% of the time anymore. Instead, you're asking yourself questions. What do these students need? What do you need? What does orange diamond, right, that little shape there, what does that kid need right now? Do they need management? Do they need concept help? Maybe they really need help linking some concepts. Maybe they just need some inspiration. Right? Maybe they need a high five. Maybe they need a good incentive one way or another to get to work. Maybe they need tools to help scaffold them or scaffold their understanding. Or maybe they just need physical tools to accomplish a project in the room. Maybe they need love. Maybe a kid slept in their car last night and really just need a minute of attention and love before they feel capable to tackle learning for that day. This model lets you do that, right? Maybe they have language barriers and they need some vocabulary work. Maybe they just need to talk to you for a minute about what they're trying to do. Maybe they need a challenge. Maybe they're checked out and they need challenges, right? I want to draw attention to the fact that this is about how the teacher can help the students individually. It's very adaptive. It's very live time, right? Our students are accessing our content independently. So we begin to address what they need to access it more effectively, or to access it, to scaffold it and access it to different levels, to either inspire them to move on, or to deepen their learning, or to link concepts. What do these students need? Not just educationally, right? We're talking physically and emotionally as well, right? I really love talking about, do students need love in the classroom? If you're a teacher that thinks that some students don't just need some love sometime, you're crazy, because you give them a little love in a model like this, you will really see students blossom. So, what happens traditionally when school starts is, when learning starts, each one of these students is tackling different assignments, working in, many different objectives, either skills practice, instruction, or projects. And generally, I find myself touching base with my high-need students first, right? The students that either need a little love, they need a little language scaffolding with directions. Sometimes they're going to need to figure out, where am I supposed to start? I forgot where I left off yesterday, and I need help figuring out where I'm going to start. I'll tend to touch base with those kids first, but really, that's not predictable, right? Any student could need you for a different reason, and so you wind up circling the room, dealing with some kids more often than others, some kids with immediacy and some kids later on. But you have a lot of, in this model, there tends to be a number or a lot of time where you can just observe all students to make sure that they're engaged, right? When a student, raises their hand and says, "Mr. C, I just passed, I just passed my multiple digit addition test. It took me 3 times and I finally passed it," right? I have time to go up in front of the class and be like, "Dudes, Yellow Diamond just passed her multiple digit addition test. Can she get a whoop, whoop? Whoop?" Right? You have time to really craft and tailor incentive programs in your classroom. If you are inspired by point charts, or if you are inspired by levels, or if you are inspired by prizes, or different themes, you have the opportunity to tailor your content around absolutely any theme you want as a teacher, and absolutely any incentive program that you feel successful with, right? And it's so easy to quickly go back and start addressing needs of students, or really even just checking in, right? Those high need students tend to need a lot of check-in to go, how are you doing? Are you doing well? Do you feel capable? Do you feel confident? Are you paying attention? Are you working? What's going on here? Oh, this guy just passed an assessment. Can he get a yippee-yi-yay? Yippee-yi-yay, right? Like it tends to become, or in my experience, a very collegial learning environment where each student is working independently, but also very aware of what's going on in the classroom around them, very in tune with their teacher. Like I said, you have more individual access to your teacher than in any other model, so students tend to tune in on that. You'll very quickly learn the students that need you more, and then there are students that just want you out of their way, right? Those students that are ready to go, that understand this process and are ready to onboard content quickly, independently, and really, watching that is absolutely breathtaking and eye-opening. And so I'm going to dive deeper into some of the classroom dynamics. I'm going to dive deeper into those 4 steps next, right? We're going to talk a lot about each one of, the digital instruction, digital skills practice, digital projects, and digital assessments, what we're looking for when we're creating these units of study for our students. But I want to take a quick reflection at what we learned here about the redefinition of the teacher role. So first and foremost, the focus of this model is on the learner. They're working in a functional model. They're working with independence, and you, the teacher, are able to focus on independent needs of students, which is absolutely transformative to your job, right? Before, you were standing up on stage telling kids what they need to learn. Now you're really, you're cycling through the room, finding out what kids need, where they need it, and bringing them the resources or the time that they need. And this model responds, like I said, very quickly. You can identify needs of students and address it quickly. You don't have to go, wait till I'm done teaching this, right? Isn't that great? And wouldn't that be great when a kid goes, I don't understand. Wait till I'm done here, and then I'll deal with you. You deal with that problem in live time, in class. You work with that student it makes them feel valuable. It changes the way they see you as a teacher and as a person. This model requires a lot of prep on the front side and a lot of adaptability in real time, right? Like you got to make a lot of stuff digitally as a teacher and go through the routines and rituals with your students so that they know where to find it, how to access it, the order that you want them to access it in. Lots of work on the front side, lots of adaptability in real time. Sometimes, some days, students are going to need a lot of help. You're going to have you're going to have 2-3 kids waiting for you to get to them to help out. Some days, you're going to be free to do a lot more observation work and a lot more data collection on who's working on what, when, and where. And as a teacher, you have to be adaptable and ready to do different things on different days, different things in different moments, honestly. And then finally, take away from this, look at how you can customize this, right? I had mentioned before, it doesn't have to be a classroom. We're going to do this on a bus, okay? We're going to create leveled gamified content on a school bus so that we can drive around and students can access this stuff in transit. This can be done in so many different learning environments. Really, the process itself has to do with, the digital world and digital access to content, and then student and teacher relationships and interactions. And that can happen in so many learning environments. And so think about how you would adapt incentive programs. Do you want to have a dinosaur themed class for your second graders, right? Where you're gaming out and leveling out all of your objectives to, get them to build or create or learn about different dinosaurs. Or maybe you want a science or an Olympian themed incentive program or classroom where you're leveling out and providing different incentives that are themed for one way or another. I personally prefer dragons, but the great thing is you can pick what you want. You really get to start tailoring the physicality, the look, the feel, the palpability of what's going on in your classroom from an environment standpoint to what you love the most as a teacher, and still providing that mastery of content to your students at a base and a foundational level. So I really hope this helped. I'm going to dive into my next video. Actually, is going to be about the redefined role of student. We're going to kind of look at a similar slides, but really think about what's going on in a student's head while they're going through this, as opposed to what's going on in the teacher's head. So I will see you next time.